Hey, it's NPR's Book of the Day. I'm Andrew Limbong. I imagine if you're an actor that gets famous for one character, you're bound to have complicated feelings about it. The actor Jaleel White writes about having these mixed feelings in his new memoir. He played Steve Urquelle, the breakout star of the sitcom Family Matters, a show I spent a good 70% of my childhood watching. White's memoir is called Growing Up Urkel, and in this interview with NPR's Ailsa Chang, he's really honest about how, on the one hand, he wanted to live outside of Urkel's shadow, but on the other, felt kind of defensive about the character. That's coming up.
Support for NPR and the following message come from LinkedIn Ads. As a B2B marketer, you know how noisy the digital ad space can be. If your message isn't targeted to the right audience, it just disappears into the noise. By using LinkedIn Ads, you can reach professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. Target them by job title, industry, company, and more. Get a $100 credit on your next campaign at linkedin.com/book. Terms and conditions apply.
If you're someone who grew up in the 1990s, it would have been pretty hard to escape this voice.
Can I do that?
Steve Urquelle. Who doesn't know this name? Who doesn't know that look? You know, those big glasses, those jeans that were hiked up too high and too tight. And of course, don't forget those puppy dog eyes, always locked on his neighbor, Laura Winslow.
I'm gonna tell you what I really think of you.
How? I'm a nerdy, annoying dweeb, right?
Right. And I'm very lucky to have you as a friend.
Well, the man who grew up as Steve Urquelle is Jaleel White. He's out with a new memoir about those years on the sitcom Family Matters. It's called Growing Up Urkel. Jaleel White stopped by our studio at NPR West to talk about the book and how that role both catapulted and caged him, and how it almost didn't happen. You see, he'd been acting since the age of 3, and by age 12, he'd already gotten kind of tired of the roles out there for him.
Roles for black kids back then were very stereotypical. You either played the kid who stole something and got caught, you played a street kid, a bully, or you got a chance to play the best friend.
But once his dad convinced him to go for the role of Steve Urquelle, he really went for it. His mom told him to dress the part at the audition with those signature jeans that were too tight and a pair of his dad's glasses that were too big.
I wanted the glasses with the tape in the middle, like the classic Revenge of the Nerds glasses.
Right, but that's too cliche. Come on.
Well, but that's what I wanted. So I'm trying to actually show people how accidents create, iconography.
Yeah.
And I went in there and I actually made the conscious decision at age 12. I remember I didn't want them to meet Jaleel. I wanted them to I just walked in and
You were Urkel.
I just introduced myself in the second audition as Steve.
So I didn't realize Steve Urquelle was only supposed to be a character for one episode.
Yep.
Right? But he became arguably the star of the whole show, like right up until the very end. And I'm just curious what you think. What was it about Urkel, this dorky, socially inept nerd, that drew people in so powerfully, you think?
I mean, by today's standards, he would just be considered a stalker. But by 90s values,
A very lovable stalker.
right? But by 90s values, he was well-intentioned. He was awkward, but reassured. And so his love for Laura, his smarts, and his acceptance of himself, I had no concept at the time, were very, very relatable qualities that I think a lot of people latched on to.
Yeah.
And then just some good old-fashioned comic timing.
But, you also talk about in this book how Urkel subverted stereotypes about Black boys.
There was no archetype for my character. That's what I'm proud of, though. Anybody that was a part of that generation, and you were a kid, you were a minor on TV, you were probably the son or the daughter of, right? So I defied that. I was the neighbor. And typically the neighbor was going to be an adult, and it was a Black kid. And the irony of the character was our entire writer's room was white. Nobody thought, well, we need to put some Black folks in charge of this. So I've even seen criticisms online, like, on Twitter and whatnot, that or said, I never thought Carl was a believable Black cop. And it's like, well, maybe that's because he was a Black cop that was written by white writers.
But I want to ask you because, when you were a college student at UCLA, you had this teaching assistant in a class called The History of Broadcast TV in America. And in this class one day, you hear the teaching assistant talk about the character Steve Urkel as being a, quote, Sambo, a character that was meant to cater specifically to white audiences. If you had a chance to go back to that moment, would you have dealt with it differently? Would you have raised your hand and interjected something?
You touching a nerve with that question. I actually do regret not raising my hand.
What did it feel like to be sitting there being called Sambo?
Oh, it was humiliating. It was absolutely humiliating. We can all go back and play woulda, shoulda, coulda. I do wish I had stood up for myself enough to say, please stop. You don't know much about television production. It's unfortunate for these kids who've paid to hear expertise, and you're not offering expertise, at least as it pertains to me.
Yeah. Ooh. It felt, though, at times, especially now after reading your book, that your character confined you, right? Like there were moments where, yes, you could break free of Steve Urkel and transform into this alter ego, Stefan Urquelle, who was this cool, suave ladies man.
And I could play basketball, and I could do all types of different things like that. Yep,
right.
Moments.
Steve who?
Steve Urkel. You.
No. I'm Stefan, sweet thing.
You wrote, Stefan saved what my people thought of me as a person. Did freezing into place for the role of Urkel affect how you saw your own masculinity sometimes?
100% in college.
And I want to talk about how that affected your dating life, how you compare yourself, or you did, with your co-star Darius McCrary, who played Eddie Winslow. And the way you wrote about it, it seemed like you thought he was definitely smoother with the ladies when you were both teenagers, because he seemed to understand something very important, that part of dating in the industry is to entertain women's expectations that you help them in that industry. So let me ask you now, decades later, do you wish you were more transactional about dating, looking back? Because I couldn't tell, to be honest, reading that chapter.
So that's awesome. I love what you gleaned from the chapter. I do not wish that I had been more transactional, because I think it would have taken my character to a place that it didn't need to go.
Your character, like your moral character, not your on-script character.
You caught that, exactly. Yeah. It would have taken my moral character to know that. I operated with an incredible degree of naivete that ultimately saved my ass.
So when you look back, you're actually glad that you were a bit innocent and naive.
I firmly subscribe to rejection being God's protection.
Can I ask you, because you titled this memoir, Growing Up Urkel.
Yeah.
Do you feel people have let you grow past Urkel by now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or is Urkel kind of an identity you never really get to leave behind?
The thing I love to educate people about is each generation receives me for something different. I've really learned that it's always been about how I make you feel. It's never been about me. So when somebody comes up to me and says, this is how I feel about you, I accept that. That's cool. But, thank you so much. There's some other people in the line. And they want to talk to me about something different.
Yeah.
And I try to take it all with grace.
Jaleel White, his new memoir is called Growing Up Urkel. Thank you so much, Jaleel, for visiting NPR West today in person. It was so much fun to talk to you.
Thank you. You're awesome. I'm still thumbing through all these pages that you outlined of my book.
That's right. I take notes, Jaleel.
I feel like I'm an author. I'm like,
well, then there must be some magic clue inside.
This message comes from NPR sponsor KeyBank. At KeyBank, they're dedicated to helping their clients succeed by delivering expert-driven insights on trends that matter. Find out what's forecasted in healthcare and sustainability, how to navigate future economic conditions and technology trends, and how to protect yourself against cybersecurity threats. Head to key.com/trending topics to get a look into their insights or speak to a banker today. This message comes from Instagram. Recently, Instagram introduced teen accounts with built-in protections. Teens automatically get safety settings that limit who can contact them, the content they see, as well as settings to ensure their time on Instagram is well spent. Support for NPR and the following message come from GoodRx. Did you know GoodRx offers 20 popular diabetes medications for under $20? Check GoodRx before heading to the pharmacy and get up to 80% off your prescriptions. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Search any medication, get your coupon, and start saving. Even if you have insurance or Medicare, GoodRx could beat your copay. See how much you could save on diabetes and everyday prescriptions at goodrx.com/book.